Whether you call it Kveik, Kvik, or Kvike, there's no denying that this unique Norwegian yeast has had a remarkable impact on the brewing scene, and Imperial Yeast's A43 Loki is one of the best versions out there. With the ability to produce a clean beer when fermented as warm as 104 degrees Fahrenheit or 40 degrees Celsius, you heard that right, while also performing well at more standard ale temperatures, Imperial Yeast A43 Loki is as versatile as it gets, meaning you have zero excuses for failing to brew throughout the year. Learn more about A43 Loki at imperialyeast.com and grab a pouch for your next batch to see what all the fuss is about. In the 20 plus years I've been brewing and drinking craft beer, I've had the opportunity to attend many amazing events, from local fests put on by breweries to international conferences in places like Ireland and New Zealand. In my mind, these events can serve a number of purposes, and while no two have ever been exactly the same, what they all have in common is the immense amount of effort that went into planning them. This is the Brewlosophy Podcast. I'm your host, Marshall Schott, and this week I'm joined by contributor Andy Carter to chat about our experiences planning and hosting brewing and beer events.
Making beer is a ton of fun, and obviously we talk a lot about it all the time, but it's only half the story. Making it is producing it for other people, in my mind, and putting on events like the ones we're going to talk about today is really the core part of the other half of brewing.
Yeah, a lot of people will talk about how what really, they love beer, they love making beer, but what really keeps them in the hobby is the community, and I feel like these types of events are what build and maintain that community that we find to be so meaningful in homebrewing in general. Now, a few months back, we did drop an episode where Will and I shared our experiences attending events and how we navigate those and such, but we never really got into what it's like to plan and host these events. I felt this was a good opportunity for us to focus on this topic, not only because of your ample experience with the SoCal Homebrewers Festival, Andy, but because of the recent news about the AHA breaking away from the Brewers Association, and the hope I know many past and present members have that this will usher in the return of some form of a homebrew con. This is going to be an interesting episode, or at least I hope and I think it will be, Andy, because of the experience that you've got. Now, if you're a fan of this show and you'd like to receive a reward for your support, consider becoming a patron of Brewlosophy over at patreon.com/Brewlosophy, where you make a small pledge and receive rewards like access to unpublished contributor recipes, unique discounts at YakimaValleyHops.com, and an invitation to a monthly live Q&A session with somebody in the brewing world. Coming up later this month, February of 2025, author, podcast host, and longtime figure in the world of homebrewing, the great Drew Beecham, will be returning to hang out with patrons. Now, as you've all heard and we just talked about, the Homebrewers Association, or the American Homebrewers Association, recently announced that they are going to be completely disassociating from the Brewers Association. This is kind of spreading like wildfire right now. It's being talked about a lot amongst homebrewers, particularly those who have had some experience with the AHA. They're going to be going completely independent as a nonprofit organization. Well, Drew is a member of this transitional board, and for as long as I've known Drew, he has been dedicated to this hobby and those who engage in it. So I'm confident his inclusion in this transitional process is going to be a very good thing. Of course, participants can ask Drew about anything they want, like his experience with experimental brewing, with Denny Kahn, cider making, of course, and his weird beers like guacamole beers, and I believe he made a clam chowder beer at one point. To be a part of this session, make your pledge of just $3 or more by Friday, February 21st, 2025, as Drew's going to be taking questions on Saturday, the 22nd. All past sessions are stored on our private Patreon and YouTube pages, so you can go back and watch them whenever you like. And just a reminder, we are now hosting these sessions on Skype as opposed to Facebook. So for those who have been avoiding this pledge level because of the Facebook thing, it's no longer an issue. Again, that's patreon.com/Brewlosophy. Another really easy way to help us out is by using the links found at brewlosophy.com/support. When you're shopping online, your experience doesn't change at all, and we get a little kickback for the referral. Thanks so much to everybody who's made an effort to help us out in that way. And finally, if you wouldn't mind letting us know what you think about this show by leaving a rating and review in Apple Podcast or wherever it is you listen to podcasts that allow you to leave those reviews, we would appreciate that immensely. Thanks so much to everybody who's already rated and reviewed the show. We read every single one of them. Feedback is brought to you by Clawhammer Supply, who are known for their incredible all-in-one electric brewing systems. I've brewed on both their 120 and 240 volt systems, and I'm telling you, these things are amazing. Efficient, easy to use with a relatively small footprint. You will not be disappointed with one of these units. Plus, the guys behind the company run an amazing YouTube channel, which you can find by searching YouTube for Clawhammer Supply. If you haven't checked out this channel yet, you really need to go check it out. If you're in the market for electric brewing gear or even just reasonably priced kettles and such, make sure to check out what Clawhammer Supply has to offer over at clawhammersupply.com. And don't forget to let them know Brewlosophy sent you when you're checking out. That's clawhammersupply.com. Listener Wade Wallinger from Kingwood, Texas, wrote in to share his thoughts on some stuff we talked about. Coincidentally, it was about brewing events in a prior episode. It was the one with Will, I believe, or it may have been a Brew and A episode. But Wade said, "Thanks as always for your relevant content and insightful observations." You are welcome, Wade. While I agree that many HomebrewCon educational sessions relied heavily on, quote, sit and get, the ones I remember well are those that included a sensory or interactive learning experience. I remember Ken Schramm describing his meads and sharing them for tasting. I remember a panel discussion on gluten-free brewing, which included full-size samples of the impaneled brewers' gluten-free beers. I remember Annie Johnson sharing her brewing experience at Pilsner Urquell, including samples of her attempt at a traditional Czech Pils. I remember a talk on recreating ancient beer from clay pot residue that included samples of the experimental result. So, don't fully poo-poo the value of educational seminars. They can be meaningful and memorable if they include a sensory or interactive component. I'd be interested in attending an event that's organized under the Brewlosophy umbrella. I think a laid-back event, perhaps like the Southern California Homebrew Campout, would be fun and informative. What do you think, Andy?
Yeah, we have speakers, which we'll get into later in this topic, but we have speakers and we encourage them to bring samples. I think that is the best way in an event like SoCal Homebrew Fest or any AHA Homebrew Con, when if you're describing something, why is there not a sample up in front of you? I think in general, we try to make it a little broader. It depends on the year and who actually answers the phone when we call them to attend and give a talk. But we've expanded a bit into more food for other fermentation, and it just makes sense to have something to try because that's the whole hobby is sensory experience.
Yeah, we're going to get very deep into the planning side of this. That's the nature of this entire episode, in fact. But I just wanted to say that I acknowledge that my prior comments may have come across to some as poo-pooing educational seminars. And that's because on some level I sort of was. I'm not going to hide behind, this microphone over here and pretend that I wasn't. What I apparently failed to clarify, though, is that I was referring specifically to non-interactive sessions where a person stands in front of a group of hungover people and lectures for an hour. I mean, Andy, you've been there. When you look around and half the audience is asleep, like, oh, great. You really got your money's worth.
Yeah, it was one of the first AHA ones I went to. It was 8 o'clock in the morning. It was about roasting grain, and there was no beer anywhere. It was painful. But I love to talk, but it was very painful.
And that's the thing. The talks are often about stuff you can easily find or probably already know about, from the internet, which makes it easier to take a nap during that time. I was actually I believe I was at the talk that Wade is referencing for Annie Johnson, talking about Czech Pils and her time in Pilsner Urquell. If I'm not mistaken, that was an 8 a.m. session, and it was rough sitting there, after a night of having fun and partying and what. So I get it. But seeing as the topic of this episode is our experiences planning and hosting these types of events, I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you so much for the email, Wade. Totally understand where you're coming from. And should we decide to move forward with this Brewlosophy event, which is being discussed, on the back channels, I hope to see you there. If you have show feedback, you could send it to feedback@brewlosophy.com or drop us a note on social media. All right, time for a quick break. When we return, we're going to be discussing our experiences planning and hosting brewing and beer events. There's no denying that stainless steel is the best material for brewing equipment, and Delta Brewing Systems offers some of the lowest prices on high-quality stainless gear, like the Firm Tank, which in addition to holding 8 gallons or 30 liters of wort, comes with a domed lid to even further reduce the chances of a messy blow-off. Plus, it can hold up to 4 psi of pressure for closed transfers. Delta Brewing Systems also has their own line of brew kettles, as well as one of the lowest-priced all-in-one electric brewing systems out there, and their prices are shockingly low. If you're in the market for legit stainless gear that won't break the bank, do yourself a favor and head over to deltabrewingsystems.com today.
Dear?
Yes, my love?
Will you share the most precious thing in the world with me and be my bullmate.
Are you asking me to share Qdoba with you? Yes! 1,000,000 times yes! I will always love Qdoba.
This Valentine's Day, Qdoba Rewards members get a free entree with the purchase of an entree and a drink. Sign up for rewards in the Qdoba app today. Valid in-restaurant or online. Only on 2/14. Join Qdoba Rewards to redeem the offer. At participating locations, Qdoba Rewards members only. Log into your account or scan QR code at checkout. One offer per member. Cannot combine with other discounts or offers. Delivery and taxes extra. Other restrictions may apply.
Serving homebrewed beer from a keg is not only awesome, but given how much easier it is than bottling, it can be good motivation to brew more often. The Komos Deluxe Kegerator is a perfect solution. With the option for up to 4 high-quality NukaTap faucets, the included digital thermostat, a fan-cooled stainless tower, all wrapped in a gorgeous stainless steel exterior, the Komos Deluxe Kegerator can be built to fit any home brewery, and it comes with everything you need to get started, like tubing, CO2 tank, and regulator. There are too many features to list here, so head over to morebeer.com today to learn more about the Komos Deluxe Kegerator.
Dear?
Yes, my love?
Will you share the most precious thing in the world with me and be my bullmate?
Are you asking me to share Qdoba with you? Yes! 1,000,000 times yes! I will always love Qdoba.
This Valentine's Day, Qdoba Rewards members get a free entree with the purchase of an entree and a drink. Sign up for rewards in the Qdoba app today. Valid in-restaurant or online. Only on 2/14. Join Qdoba Rewards to redeem the offer. At participating locations, Qdoba Rewards members only. Log into your account or scan QR code at checkout. One offer per member. Cannot combine with other discounts or offers. Delivery and taxes extra. Other restrictions may apply.
Full disclosure, while I've participated in the planning of a handful of events, I've only been host to a couple of them. Such is not the case at all for you, Andy, who not only served as president of the California Homebrewers Association, but if I'm not mistaken, you were previously on the board of your homebrew club, Vibe, as well, where you guys, where you contributed to the planning of certain events too.
Yeah, so a little history background is when I started homebrewing in Santa Barbara, there really wasn't a club that was encouraging, a lot of sampling and like education and like upping your game, so to speak. It was a lot of internet stuff. So Homebrew Talk, Brewlosophy, that's where I read. And so then I found Vibe, the Ventura Independent Beer Enthusiasts, a bit of a drive. And if you live in Southern California, you understand that while they may seem close geographically, they are not close chronologically or chronographically. So it took a drive, but I started meeting these guys in 2011, and I was immediately, this is my home. I ended up being able to stay in Southern California for work, so I was able to still stay a member of Vibe. And over the course of Vibe, I was the president of Vibe from about 2014 to 2018 or 19. I can't remember how long it was. It was multiple years. The previous president said, "Hey, do you want to run it?" And I said, "Sure." And so the main part of that, as I became president there, was to encourage, every meeting would be some type of educational part with sampling. We did off flavors. We had campouts, and that is still happening today. Multiple club members have taken over and taken the reins, and the club is still all centered around the social activities with like meetings and stuff, but also high levels of education. Not as much competition, but still high interactivity, and event planning goes into year round with that club. With SoCal Homebrew Fest, that I started attending actually in 2012, and becoming the president or being around events, I was like, okay, very curious about how does this thing run? And I was really curious about joining the board. And so when they asked me in 2015 to join, I was really happy. And so I've been the president of that for many years. Now I'm just the treasurer, and it's my last year officially on the board of SoCal Homebrew Fest.
And let's go into a little bit about SoCal Homebrew Fest, because I think one of the things we need to focus on, if we're going to talk about our experiences with planning events, mine are qualitatively different than yours, because the events that I've planned, and I'll talk about those in detail in a minute, have been more arguably Brewlosophy focused, but really, parties as opposed to like educational things. Yeah. You've been a part of these things, Andy. So SoCal, I had the pleasure of being a guest invited by you, was 2018, I think, or 19,
yes. Yeah, 17,
Yeah,
18 is
with
about
Drew
that,
Beecham, in fact. And it was one of the most unique homebrewing events that I've participated in, possibly the funnest one that I've done. And I've been around the world doing homebrewing stuff because I love to camp. And it was a camp out.
Yes.
And it's multi-days. Tell us a little bit about the background of SoCal Homebrew Fest, which you can name drop a little bit because we know you told me the story.
Well, there's some names. So back in if you watch, there's some good movies, Suds County. There's a lot of great movies about California homebrewing. Suds County is one of the best, actually. But if you look at that, they talk about the beginning of homebrewing in like Northern County, San Diego, and there was clubs like Quaff, and then there was the Falcons, and obviously in Los Angeles, and they all decided in the 1990, 91, they should do a party that called the Southern California Homebrewers Festival. So 1991, hosted at the Salurzo family winery. Yes, that's the Salurzos of the Russian River fame. Vinny's parents actually hosted the first one, or they hosted it on their winery in Temecula. So it's been in Temecula for many years. It's moved around a little bit, which we'll get into later. But it was hosted there, and many famous homebrewers, now pro brewers, or now maybe retired pro brewers, were there. So people like Tommy Arthur, Vinny, I'm trying to think of other names. They'll come to me in a minute. But basically, that was the first one. And it was, my understanding was a few hundreds of people, kind of show up. I think the ticket said 11 a.m. to ? I don't know if there was actually camping at it, but people set up booths. But clubs like Falcons, Quaff, clubs that still exist today, this is now 30 plus years later, were attending that first one. Very cool. And then since then, it's been hopped around California, a couple sites, to kind of describe the event as it is today, which has been structurally the same for the last, I think, 20 years or so. It's a 2-day event. It's a Friday and a Saturday. Something happens on Friday. It's been evolved over time, but Friday night, people are getting in, they're setting up their campgrounds, they're setting up their booths, and it's kind of a chill social session. Over the years, we've added pro brewers, so there's a bit of a pro pour, we call it. There's a bragging rights only competition, which is kind of a fun little thing, which I'll get into later. But then Saturday's the main event. It's 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. Every club sets up a booth. We provide a pop-up tent. We stake into the ground. You set up your booth, your kegerators, your tap handles, your computer screens, your robotic serving arms that people have set up over the years, your snacks, and you serve beer all day. 40, many clubs will have a couple taps. Some clubs have 80 taps. It just depends. Throughout the course of the day, we'll have speakers, some educational components. There's food trucks. We have a massive raffle where the grand prize is usually a big system, either an electric system or a 3-tier or a single-tier propane system. Plenty of great donated beer from professional breweries, and a great time. It was always structured around bringing clubs together in a non-competition environment. We try to keep to that as much as possible, though we have added some competitive elements to the event. But it is a summit in the most basic way. It's a summit of homebrewers, Southern California, but really like Southwest America.
Yeah. So, and that's a thing we're going to break down. We've got a whole bunch of things, considerations, when it comes to planning events. And then in the next segment, we're going to move on to running the actual event, just to try to keep this show a little bit organized. But having attended just one time SoCal Homebrewers Festival, I mean, you show up to these things, whether it's Homebrew Con or the National Homebrewers Conference in Ireland or, SoCal Homebrew Fest, they're all different. I mean, that's the one thing that I've realized in attending this swath of different events over the years is that they are all very different, which is great because it means that you're getting a little taste of something new. SoCal Homebrewers Fest, though, I mean, I have to imagine with the number of booths that are there, with the number of campers that are there, and then the way that it's kind of separated and planned out, I look at something like that and I'm thinking this had to take a small army to plan out. I mean, there are so many moving parts, and to make something like that work, to pull it off, really, yeah, there's just got to be a lot of hands in that, mixing that up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the main thing we've learned, or the thing I learned doing this, walking in thinking, I'm going to learn how to really run an event. And what you find out is it's just really dedicated people that, for better or worse, are doing everything possible to put it on. Why I say better for worse is, and I talk about this, I gave one of the HomebrewCon keynotes or whatever they call headline speakers a few years ago. I said, people really want the event to occur, and why the negative part is people can take on too much responsibility and don't spread that across their other people running it, and that's to the detriment of the event. And so I really made it a point in my tenure of the event is to spread the load out, make everyone's lives a little bit easier, but that grows the event because now more people are contributing to the success of it. So yes, it's a massive planning experience, which I have some
I can't wait to hear those, because the things that I've planned, which I'll break down now, some of the bigger events that I've contributed to the planning of, probably the first one was the Chop and Brew pre-funk party that we did in 2017 in Minneapolis. It was the day before HomebrewCon officially started. And so, this is a common thing that other outfits have done as well, like the Brewing Network, where, you tap into your fans and the folks who are interested in what it is you're doing, and you offer something fun to do the day that they fly in, basically. and our thinking on this was, well, they're going to, all of the people attending, or ostensibly all of the people attending the pre-funk party, which we planned with Chip Walton from Chop and Brew fame, and prior to that, Brewing TV, because he lives in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So we did a collaborative party there. And, our thinking was, we want to create something, a party. We don't want this to be anything educational. That we're not trying to, drive people over to come to our event because there's going to be a big name in home brewing there, giving a talk. It was nothing like that. It was just, hey, check it out. You pay this price, you're going to get this included, this many beers, this type of a souvenir pack. And this is the kind of stuff we're going to be doing. I mean, obviously we do karaoke. We had a whole karaoke section there. We had a raffle that people could, pay into, and that money went to different things, good things in our opinion, at least. And it was, we pulled it off. The planning for it took, it was mainly just Chip and me. And then we had people who knew more about certain aspects kind of coming in as we progressed, and, organizing a place to go, and then working with the people who own said place to go. All of that stuff, it's like, geez, it is a bear getting this stuff taken care of. Well, as if we didn't learn our lesson with that, the following year in Portland, the day before HomebrewCon started, we did what we called the Brewlosophy Pre-Funk Karaoke Party. And in this one, we actually rented out a legit karaoke bar. We're going to break down some of the, goods and bads that I experienced in that process. But that was a fun one. Again, this was more of a party thing. There was nothing educational. The music was loud. People were singing. People were drinking at a bar. It was just a place, again, to kind of encourage community amongst people who share a similar interest in the kind of weird stuff we do at Brewlosophy. And then probably the most I've contributed to planning something that ultimately didn't come to fruition because of COVID was working with Yakima Valley Hops from about 2017 through 2019 on what we were really working towards developing a sort of hop harvest party seminar type of deal that involved, it was basically the whole time would have been interactive. And we spent hours and hours in conference rooms on video calls. And we were so stoked to get that thing going, this collaborative harvest event. And then COVID hit. And with COVID came all kinds of changes that unfortunately that idea went way on the back burner. So I can speak to some of the planning that was involved in this, but we never actually did the event. So I can't say how it manifested in the end, unfortunately, but it's something that I still have kind of on the back burner, and I'd love to get back to chatting with the guys at YVH about. But that is going to be the basis of my experience, is those three main things that I've contributed to. I've never been a part of, say, a nonprofit event, something like, I would imagine SoCal Homebrewers Fest is a nonprofit type based event.
501c3. So yeah, fully. I mean, that's for many legal reasons, which we'll get into.
Yeah,
later.
exactly. And that's the case for a lot of these bigger events. I do, a lot of what we've heard from fans of Brewlosophy is we would love to have something that is private, that's under the Brewlosophy label, because of the ability to go and do, different things and not having to, it's not a for-profit thing necessarily. We're going to talk about the money stuff here in a minute. But so anyways, those are our bases for when it comes to, considerations to make when planning these events. But let's start off, I know that for me, when I have this idea, the first thing that comes to my mind is, where the hell do we begin? What's the first thing we need to start talking about? Spitballing ideas, obviously, and all of that. But once you get kind of an idea set and you know what you want to do, where do you begin with actually getting the event planned?
It's a good question. So I think the first thing I'll start with was what I was told by Vinny Chilurzo the core concept of SoCal Homebrewers Fest from the beginning. So first, the title, Southern California, okay, homebrewers, not homebrewing, not homebrew, homebrewers. It's about the people, and it's a festival. So the title describes what we're trying to get to. His two core tenets, or the team that started it, was it should be no pro beer, only homebrewers, and no competition, only sharing. We've since broken both rules, but we want to start with those two core ideas, which is 30 plus years ago. That's what they had. They really wanted a very different event. You could imagine in 1990. Well, first, I don't know how many homebrew beer festivals. There was nothing like today with the number of beer festivals, but specifically, I think a lot of guys hung out at judging competitions. They didn't have an event to go to like this. They wanted a core homebrew festival. So first, put some bounds on the topic. What are you trying to get out of it? A sentence or two sentences is really important so that you can structure the brainstorming session around that, because otherwise it is a bit blue sky.
Yeah, that's when I think about the planning that went into all of the things that I've contributed, the three things that I pointed to. I've planned other events that aren't necessarily brewing related, of course, but that's key, right? Is I think the key word is logistics. How are we going to make this work before we make it work? Let's ensure that we've got fail safes in place. The hardest thing for me, like you said, was do we limit attendance to a specific subsect of people? When you invited me to SoCal Homebrewers Fest, in my head, and I don't even know to this day if I was right or not, but in my head, you could only attend that if you were a member of a Southern California Homebrewers Club. Is that true, or?
It is true. So legally speaking, we are a 501c3 nonprofit in the state of California and federally. That allows us the ability to get an alcohol license or an event license for the event because we're a nonprofit. Part of the rules, and this is something that happened in 2014 and 2015, if people can remember, 2014, there was no SoCal Homebrewers Festival because of a law change in 2013 that allowed other nonprofits to accept beer for donation. But during the legislative element of that law, they added a clause that said the nonprofit cannot solely exist for home brewing.
Wow. That
actually ended our event. And it didn't happen in 2014. We got very much wiser with legal stuff, and now I actually have alerts that tell me when beer or alcohol becomes a state law, and I read the law to make sure we're not going to not have an event. But that's an aside. But to attend the event, you do need to be a member because it is technically a private event.
Yeah.
It can only be attended by the members of the event, and that is essentially the difference between, say, going to a more public or tickets at the door type event where you can buy a ticket, a wristband, and walk into a fundraiser for Red Cross or Surfrider or something like that. That's a public event where there's a lot more rules about food service, cleanliness, security, all these things. But we're technically a private event. So that's why you have to be a member, not just of a club, but actually of the California Homebrewers Association.
Yeah. And to clarify, this is laws in the state of California. It's going to differ in every state that you go to. And it is an event that is held at a non-beer place. It's held at a campground, so it's public.
Yes.
And so you've got it. There's a lot of hoops that you've got to jump through. For us, for Brewlosophy, speaking about our target market, our target audience, right? We figured you look at the Chop and Brew Pre-Funk, right? Chip's channel is called Chop and Brew. We just changed the BREW to a BRE or BR umlaut U. And right there, like you said, what are we calling it? It's Chop and Brew. So it's fans of Chop and Brew and Brewlosophy. It's a pre-funk party. So we're doing it before, HomebrewCon, pre-funking, and it's a party, and our whole thing was, let's go to a place that is already licensed and it's completely legal for them to host their own private events, but they can serve beer all they want, right? It makes it way easier. And that is part of the planning that went into both of the pre-funk parties that we've hosted so far. I think, when you're thinking about who can attend, you think about things like the AHA. Again, their marketing, you can only attend the AHA if you're a paid member of the AHA. Makes sense. If you are not going to host something like that, that's just completely open, you've got to keep in mind, well, that can mean, what kind of riffraff are going to show up to this thing? And so there are good reasons for being a little bit selective in who you're going to allow to attend these events. We're going to talk about some curious things that we've witnessed at events here in a minute. But another logistical, aspect aspect that you got to consider is location. And that doesn't mean just where, like in the state or city you're going to do it at, but where are you actually going to host this event? Are you going to do it at a hotel, like, conference centers, like the AHA is, typically done with HomebrewCon? Are you going to have it at a campground like SoCal Homebrew Fest? Are you going to do it at a brewery? There's a lot that goes in and depending on where you choose is going to, influence what you end up doing.
Yeah. So for the, historically, since the beginning of the SoCal Homebrew Fest, it's been some type of camping, or I believe it's been camping the entire time. Maybe not the first year. But really there is a, Marshall mentioned, camping he likes camping. I think it's a California thing. I think people generally like camping when it's a temperate climate. You're ready to go camp. And that made sense. And that also drives our costs way down. If you've ever been a part of planning or been in a conference, maybe a technical conference or a work conference, the ticket is multiple zeros after it. And that's to pay for the hotel or the conference center. We don't pay for that. And we actually are very fortunate with the deal that we have cut with the campground that we're not paying to use that site. We are just taking it over for 48 hours or 72 hours. Now, camping is still run by the KEI, which is a Campgrounds of America campsite. They still run the camping. That's for legal reasons and a liability. But when you enter our fenced off area, you're under our, rules. So it makes it's a very important logistical element because of the cost.
Yeah. And you think about, somebody might be hearing what you're saying and going, wait a minute. So you're not doing anything additional. You're just bringing in enough people to fill up this entire campground. They're paying for you're paying for the regular camp rate, but then you're also hosting this big party in there. Well, you have to remember that this campground might be 50%, might consistently maintain 50 to 65% full. So they see that we're going to fill this place out for 48 full hours. And this event host is promising they're going to keep everything clean and keep everybody in order. Hell yeah. Fine. Go use our big field. That's
exactly
just a bonus. Yep. So there are some really unique, creative ways that you can go about working these types of things in. Again, if you're going to host something at a place like a campground, you're going to have to consult the law. I mean, that is, and make sure that you've got all your ducks lined up, because if you screw something up and you are a 501c3, a nonprofit, or you're even something like Private Brewlosophy trying to serve beer in a public place, you have to have regulations in place for that kind of thing. So those are things to consider. Another one that was, I'm going to put these two together because they were a big issue when we were in the planning phases of this YVH Brewlosophy Harvest Party, is the duration and the number of attendees. Both of those together are part of what we spent a lot of time hashing out. For us, our plan for this harvest party was every day is basically going to be the same schedule, but with different stuff going on. So we're going to start at the hop shop. We're going to load up a bus or buses, multiple buses, and take you out to a different hop processing facility, a hop farm, whatever it might be, and then load everybody back on and take them to a local brewery, and then load everybody back on a bus and take them back to the hop shop. That's not cheap. And so that's going to have to come to play in the price of the ticket that you do. But also, it's not like you can pay for, 7 or 8 buses in the city of Yakima. You're going to, it's good. That would be crazy. And so we had to consider how many people and for how long do we want them here? If we go too long, are these buses even going to be available? Right. So okay, let's keep it to 2 days of travel. Well, we only want 2 buses. Well, how many people can fit on those buses? With all of the other staff who have to be there. And then, you're considering, well, we can only max out at this number of people. Let's call it 100, which would be basically 80, guests. And then 20 staff or something like that. We've got these 2 buses. We got to drive everybody around. Well, we don't want people flying all the way into Yakima, Washington and feeling like they only get 1 day of an event, right? So, okay, let's extend it to 3 days where, we're bookending them with fun events at the hop shop. So we're not responsible for getting people to and from and all this stuff. And then it's like, well, Yakima's a relatively small town. Where's everybody going to sleep? Now you got to work with hotels. You see what I'm saying? Like, this was the kind of stuff where I'm going, wow, man, event planners serve a very real purpose is all I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, so for the Homebrew Fest, it's always been the 2 days. We've debated the number of days. I think it's really 2 is the sweet spot, because you got to get in, you got to set your site up. You have things to do. You're gonna have a beer with your buddies that are camping next to you, and then something light on Friday night is nice. And really, the main thing is the Saturday, and then you're gonna have Sunday. We've debated Sunday morning things, but in general, 2 days works. A number of attendees and kind of predicting that, I don't think anyone understood what it would be the first year, and it grew and grew. And I think we maxed out around 2007 or 2008, maybe 2009 is like the total number. And I will say the total number increased due to multiple factors. One was I would say some less than perfect maintenance of the front gate. And then also the rise of craft beer, the rise of home brewing really drove attendance. I will say, and I'm honest with people when they ask, year over year since I've been on the board, we've lost people every year because, people are not in the hobby as much. People don't want to attend the event. Maybe they'll come every other year. And then just generally speaking, the attendance has gone down. Now we've had to engineer the cost structure to the event to help with that. But, in general, we have to think about that. It is a very difficult number to predict. All I can tell you right now is that it's been going down slightly every year.
Well, yeah. And that's the thing, with an event like SoCal Homebrew, most festivals and conferences, so HomebrewCon, SoCal, all of that stuff. The way I think about it, again, I've never been on the planning committee for any of these, but the way I think about it is almost like we have the capacity for X number of people to show up. We're pretty confident we're not going to hit that. So let's just market it to everybody within this, realm of folks that we know can make it. So members of AHA, members of CHA, whatever it might be, and do everything we can to get as many to come as possible, as opposed to my experience with these smaller events that I've planned where it's like, we've got to find a way to prioritize, try to figure out the people who, and I hate to use this word, so I'm using it insanely loosely here, but the people who really deserve to be marketed to first because they've been involved for longer. It's like, how do you do that? How do you effectively measure?
Well, I think there's a great way to do that is that our event is always dedicated to the homebrewers serving the beer.
Yeah.
So they know everything as soon as we know it. Now, there's another, I'm going to say class of attendee, but there's a type of attendee that's been going for 20 plus years, but's never brewed a drop of beer in their lives. But they know this party is awesome. I want them to be there. I need them to be there to make it financially sound, but serving the beer is number one, and we make sure our clubs are absolutely going to attend.
So we've talked about some of the basic logistics, laws, regulations, stuff like that. One of the things, perhaps most importantly, and you've already hit on it a couple times, is what do you charge people for it? And I'd be curious to hear from your perspective, having planned these bigger, more broad events. For us, it was like we can tabulate how much are we going to be paying for beer at the place. Everybody gets 2 free pints. We're doing this for a swag bag. We're doing this. That's all going to cost this. Let's just charge this amount, and we try to break even as much as possible. I would imagine that there's something like that goes into the planning for something like SoCal.
It's a good question. It's something I've struggled with actually since I've been on the board. I think the main thing is you definitely want to make money. Now, there was a debate, I'll say a friendly debate with a couple board members about, is it a nonprofit or non-for-profit? What does that mean? That means you don't engineer things to make money year over year. You need to, and this was something I had to teach people about and show them books about this. You need to ensure the future of the event. That means you need to charge more. It's galloping shock. Charge more than it costs. Now, when we've tried to do this over the years, and it's worked better and worse, is you want to make enough money so you can fund other events. You want to run something, quote unquote, in the black so that you can run things that are going to run red, right? You're going to run new events that are going to pay for it. So we see this, or I see the SoCal Homebrewers Festival as an event to make money to pay for things around the year. There's other overhead costs. There's other events we do. They're the money, you need money. So we have tried over the years to make it a fair price, nothing egregious. I think many people try to compare it to a beer festival price, which those tickets can be quite expensive, and it's very small time. I don't think it's a one-to-one correlation. This event, you bring your own beer. It's very DIY. It's much longer. It's a marathon, not a sprint. We're not, having professional beer, so to some people, the beer's whatever it is. And I think it's, many times the home brewing beer can be better. So it's a very different calculus. So we just try to make sure we're making a bit of extra money to pay for things around the year, and then to pay for infrastructure upgrades. The event is paid for. We bought a trailer to store all our gear. We've paid for professional marketing. We had photographers and videographers. They're not doing it for free. If you want someone good, not your uncle, but someone real, they have to be paid.
Yeah.
So you have to factor those in. So you're not trying to make 50% gross margins. I don't think we're in the 10% gross margins, but try to make enough money so that you can pay for things around the year. It just depends on the nature of it. If we're doing a one-off, then break even or cover your costs. But we're trying to be sustainable.
Yeah, that's something that, again, we put a lot of thought in to with both the Chop and Brew Pre-Funk and the following year's Pre-Funk party in Portland, as well as the planning for the YVH collab party. We are a private business, as is YVH. And while, YVH has changed over the years, arguably for the better, that is still something. If we're going to do something and put this much effort into it, there's got to be some compensation in the end for the business,
Absolutely.
And I would imagine that thought process is different for a 501c3 or for an organization like the AHA. But we know that HomebrewCon was one of their biggest cash cows. I mean, that was one of the big ways that they were able to profit and make money to support the organization was through HomebrewCon. And
GABF is GABF same way.
Same way for the Brewers Association. Exactly. And so that can't be, I don't think most people question that. They know that when part of the a percentage of their ticket fee is going to line the pockets of the people who are hosting the event. That's just how things work here. And it's just, I think for me, the difficult part was, man, I'm looking at the price tag. Let's say we say the YVH collab party was going to be $500 per person. And then you start line iteming everything that you're paying for. We're going to have food trucks and give each person a ticket that gets them one plate of food. But if they want more, they can go back. But is there going to be more left if you've got 100 people going to 2 food? All of this stuff. And it's like, well, then we're going to have to pay another food truck. Well, how much is that going to cut into the profit at the end? There's a lot that goes into it. Now, one way to help mitigate some of that pain is to also take money from sponsors, which is an interesting thing. We're very familiar at Brewlosophy with sponsorships because that's how we run. Is largely off of working with partners that we really love and value what they have to offer homebrewers. And so they pay us to promote them. Well, it's the same way with an event, is that they give the event planners money in order to, in some way, promote their business. And that can help to offset some of those costs as well. But there is the expectation that sponsor is going to get some love in some way. And you have to think about how to do that. At HomebrewCon, for example, and we've been a sponsor of HomebrewCon, you pay money so that you can have a booth so that people then can then come around and you are self-promoting yourself, whether that is through the selling of merch or hosting podcasts like we do, or like Denny and Drew do for Experimental Homebrewing or the Brewing Network. Or if you're a business that sells wares, you've got a booth where you are showing people all of this. If you're hosting a party-like thing, that's going to look different. You're not going to have an expo. Same thing with SoCal. The biggest advertising that in my experience, that happened there was homebrew clubs. I mean, you're being introduced to all of the different local homebrew clubs.
We've definitely been careful with how we do sponsorships. First of all, like Marshall mentioned, it's pay to play, right? They're there to market themselves. If they're donating, they want to see the ROI, which could be little, but they want to see something. And it's tough with a volunteer organization, not a paid staff. We don't have any paid staff. We're 501c3 actually can't. The board cannot be paid. We would have to hire someone, which we don't have the money for, to be, social media manager, for instance. So it comes down to your own volunteers. Can they do it? And we can do an okay job. We're not going to do a great job. It's not going to be this massive thing, but we also don't want it to be that. There was a time, there was a person or a company that said, like, hey, I'll put a banner up. If you let me put a banner up behind the main stage, like I'll do blah, 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 blah. And we're like, do we want that? Not really. It doesn't really make sense for the event to be like, brought to you by, Doritos, right? That doesn't make sense. So we try to keep it there. Now, we do get sponsorships. The raffle is almost nearly 100% sponsored items, which we've done really good job communicating what the event is, offering the higher end sponsors a booth for free. Just show up, or pay for the pop-up. Just show up and put your stuff out and sell stuff if you want to, or sell it, some discount code online. Any of those types of people, we really try to work with them, because the whole raffle is all self-generated by either people that sell things online or beer being donated.
Yeah, I think raffles are kind of a genius workaround for ways to gain money while also giving love to sponsors. So we did the same thing at the Chop and Brew Pre-Funk party, where we had, tens of thousands of dollars of gear that were donated by sponsors, and they got their name on a raffle ticket as well as listed in multiple places throughout the party. And then it was all on the table. We told them that one of the ways that we're going to recoup some of the money for this while not having to overcharge patrons or folks who want to attend is by contributing a portion of the raffle to this one thing, and then divvying up that between Chop and Brew and Brewlosophy, so that, again, we can recover the cost. The last thing you want, particularly, people like to think for whatever reason that there's big money in homebrewing. No, there's not. You have to cover this stuff. And if you start, especially for a small business like Brewlosophy, if I start dipping into my family's funds to pay for a party for other people, that's just not going to work. And I do my best to be as transparent and keep it as real as possible. And that's just the truth of the matter. These things don't run themselves. They don't pay for themselves. And that is a very important consideration. I feel like we've already spent some time talking about, the necessity of determining the nature of the event before you go into it. I don't know about you, Andy, and this is the case for even non-brewing related events that I've attended, but there have been times where you show up and you're like, what is the deal here? What is the point of this event? And that is just not what you want. You want people to show up and there's a clear, meaning for them being there and a clear set of things that they can do. One of my favorite experiences at a Homebrewers Fest is when I flew out to the New Zealand Homebrewers Conference. Rather than doing, you think of HomebrewCon, it's a 3-day event, more or less, and they've got all these things planned for different days and a lot of stuff that's very, very member oriented, like the homebrewers competition results, and then you do the formal dinner and all of this. And it's great. It's very organized. It's well done. Well, in New Zealand, the way that they organize their homebrewers conference is that every day is a completely different thing. So it's different days broken down. So one day we went out to NZ Hops to check out the hop facility. Another day was March Fest, which was like a homebrewers competition, I believe. I might be mixing up the terminology, but then there was one day that was more dedicated to the educational side of things, where, Michael Tonsmeyer, Gordon Strong, and I all put on our sessions, and I think most of them were very interactive. And then we go and commingle with all of the attendees. We brewed beers together, and it was just a really unique approach to hosting these events. And the neat thing is each one of those was a different opportunity for the NZHBC to charge for tickets, because each day is different and you can pick which ones you want to attend. So there's just so many different options when it comes to designing these things. I can only imagine the difficulty that goes into breaking it down the way they do over there, but they ran it so beautifully. To the guys who put that together, wow, just incredible.
Yeah, I think the main thing with the kind of the nature of the event is it is something where I've been running it for so long. We know what to do. We've debated other types of events, but what would they be? Are they just going to kind of look like this event, or are they going to be new and different? And that can be a bit of a struggle. I think the main thing that comes down to this is and this is kind of one of my tips I wanted to leave this segment with was once you know the relative bounds of things and the cost, the main thing, I think this is translated to other things and work I've done or other events, is you want to have a master schedule that everyone that's helping plan the event knows what the schedule is. So you have a topic, a due date or a drop dead date, as I like to say. Someone's assigned to do that task, and then a backup, and then maybe some notes. And then what you do with that schedule is every year you go control find the date, replace it with the new year, and delete the names and start over. And when you have that schedule, and we've rolled that schedule for like 20 plus years, when you have that, you're never out of sync with reality. And when you notice that something needs to be bumped up in the drop dead date, then move it up. And you read your little note saying, hey, we should have bought these in February, not in April. Wristbands. Who's doing wristbands? Do we need wristbands? Who's got porta potties? Did we call the security guy? Do we need to add another security guard? That schedule and that full level of transparency, I think is really important, is the transparency. If it's binary. You're either running the event or you're not. If you're running the event, you should be all on the same exact page, and that level sets everyone to the expectation that, hey, man, this has not been done yet. Who's going to do this? Then that leadership, and you say, hey, you know what? Something isn't happening and you seem busy. I'm going to take that upon myself to do it. And how do I go do that activity? So that master schedule where everyone knows everything that can happen or needs to happen can see it.
So it is impossible, as all of our listeners hopefully understand at this point, to condense everything that it takes to effectively plan a beer and brewing event into a 30-minute, give or take a couple of minutes segment here. But I do feel like we covered some of the bulk of what it goes into the planning side of things, decently well enough. When we come back from this short break, we are going to be shifting our focus to our experiences with the actual hosting of these events, which is a bit different than the planning. We'll be right back. Chilling work can be a chore, especially after a long brew day, but not with the exGEERitor Counterflow Chiller, which can chill a 5-gallon or 19-liter batch of wort in 5 minutes or less, leading to a strong cold break and clear wort in the fermenter. Brewlosophy's Matt Del Fiacco uses the exGEERitor Max and absolutely loves it. In addition to improved chilling efficiency, every exGEERitor comes with a 5-year warranty that covers the entire chiller for manufacturer defects. If you're looking to up your chilling game and a CFC is right for you, head over to exGEERitor.com today. As every brewer knows, the best beer requires the best hops, which Yakima Valley Hops provides fresh from the source to brewers around the world, carrying everything from classics like Cascade to modern favorites like Galaxy and Mosaic, as well as other ingredients and gear. Yakima Valley Hops has it all. And don't forget to check out their new podcast, The Late Edition, where the YVH crew goes into depth on our favorite plant with industry experts. Head over to YakimaValleyHops.com now to see all they have to offer and subscribe to The Late Edition wherever it is you listen to podcasts.
Dear?
Yes, my love?
Will you share the most precious thing in the world with me and be my bullmate?
Are you asking me to share Qdoba with you? Yes! 1,000,000 times yes! I will always love Qdoba!
This Valentine's Day, Qdoba Rewards members get a free entree with the purchase of an entree and a drink. Sign up for rewards in the Qdoba app today. Valid in-restaurant or online. Only on 2/14. Join Qdoba Rewards to redeem the offer. At participating locations, Qdoba Rewards members only. Log into your account or scan QR code at checkout. One offer per member. Cannot combine with other discounts or offers. Delivery and taxes extra. Other restrictions may apply.
We all know that designing recipes is really fun, and doing it well is so much easier with good software. We at Brewlosophy recently made the switch to Brewfather, and honestly, y'all, we could not be happier. Brewfather utilizes the latest technology to bring you the most robust cloud-based recipe design software that can be accessed anywhere, on your phone, tablet, desktop, and even offline. It also works seamlessly with numerous third-party devices to make it easier to monitor every step of your brew. I know change can be difficult, but trust me when I say you need to go to brewfather.app today to try it out for yourself. That's brewfather.app.
As we hopefully elucidated in the last segment, the planning that goes into brewing and beer events is quite involved, though absolutely necessary. Of course, all of that planning means nothing without proper execution, which is what we're going to be focusing on in this segment. Andy, you've clearly got more experience than me when it comes to running brewing events, so I'm going to start this one off by saying watching something I've spent upwards of a year planning come to fruition has been both amazing and surprisingly nerve-wracking, especially like once those doors open, you've got all of this buildup. You've been working on it for months, maybe even years, and those doors open and here we go. Time to see what happens. And you just cannot, we're decently good at predicting things. And in my mind, I remember thinking, man, if everything goes exactly as we planned, that'll be something. We know almost for certain that that's not going to be the case. So I'm going to just break down my experience. Again, we never did the YVH collab, so I can't address that. But I will talk about the Chop and Brew Pre-Funk Party and then the following year's PDX Karaoke Party. So many moving parts. I mean, all of that planning, right? And you get everything lined up. And you know, it's little things too. Things that I didn't even consider until we showed up and talked to the owner of the brewery. Oh, we had to close down the brewery for 6 hours just for you guys. So there's hundreds and hundreds of people on a Friday night who want to go and have a beer at their favorite brewery who show up and the doors are locked and we're inside dancing and singing karaoke songs. And how, do I have something to say to those people? Am I going to get involved with that? I don't want, the brewery or wherever we're at to lose out on money. So these are things that that I'm thinking as we're moving along. Another thing for me, and I know that you're going to speak to this probably better than I will, is dealing with issues and complaints. At the Chop and Brew Pre-Funk Party, one of the things that I could never have imagined was going to come up was, patrons showing up. They're paid attendees. They paid for their ticket. They show up. They're great. They order a beer at the bar. And like you and me on any given, Saturday, if we're at a pub and you get a beer that you're just not a big fan of, you might let the person behind the bar know, hey, this beer's not really hitting it for me. I thought it was something else. And they might pour you a new one. Well, that beer was paid for by us, and they're counting it as one of their 2 or 3 free beers. Mm-hmm. What do you do with that? That was an issue that we had because hazy IPA wasn't necessarily being called hazy IPA yet. And so people are expecting a clear beer and they're getting a hazy. And I'm like, oh man, do we just set it on the bar and hope somebody wants it? And it's all of these things, making sure that the location host is happy with what's going on, and that we're not doing anything outside of the bounds of what they think is appropriate at their establishment. These are things that I was just constantly on my mind as we were doing this. And thankfully for us, we partnered with some really cool places, particularly in Minneapolis. Now, the PDX Karaoke Party wasn't done at a craft brewery. It was done at a karaoke bar, a phenomenal karaoke bar at that. And some of the issues we ran into there, again, I was like, man, I can't believe this is happening. We thought it was so cool when we were planning that party to make it so that every attendee who showed up would get 2 cans of Rainier beer. If you're not from the Northwest, you might not know what Rainier beer is. Just think of PBR. It's like the Northwest version of Pabst Blue Ribbon. In fact, I think it's the same beer. So we had it all set up. We paid for all of the Rainier. The host, being that they have an account with distributors, was able to get us the exact amount of Rainier so that everybody attending would get 2 cans, and then they would go to the bar and pay the bartender, right, the host, for more drinks, whether it's cocktails, craft beer, whatever it is. Well, unfortunately, the distribution of those 2 cans of Rainier didn't work as planned. And I was one of the ones who didn't get a single can of it because people who showed up didn't realize that it wasn't just limited to 2. And I don't know where the communication loss was in that, but you had some people, not maliciously by any means, going and, 4 or 5 Rainiers later, and then people are showing up maybe 45 minutes into the event starting, and there's none there for them. And so now we're going, all right, that little bit of profit we were hoping to take from this, hey, you have Miller Lite behind the bar or whatever, go ahead and give these people, and those are the types of things where I'm going, okay, that sucks when you don't have, you have this plan and it doesn't completely go as planned to come to fruition. So those are some of the weird ones that we experienced at the pre-funk parties that we've hosted. But I imagine it's quite a bit more wild for a bigger event like SoCal.
It depends. I think really all of the nerves and anxiety really happen prior to the event, not at the event. In my 10 years
You're
of running it,
you're so different than me, dude.
It is.
That's where all the nerves came in.
It's very different because the event is so laid back and so long. You are not time constrained. If there's a problem, we can fix it, right? If we have to move a speaker around, if a brewery doesn't show up, there's a lot of redundancy. So I would say the main time is the planning. So over the course of running the event, I've really, like I said about that master task list, making sure those are done on time. The one year that gave me a lot of frustration was, I think it was my first year as president. And there was a discussion about how we do insurance, and I didn't like how we were purchasing our insurance previously. It didn't seem like it was actually going to, have any like force or faith or credit if it had to ever be exercised. So we pursued an alternate insurance vendor, and at the same time, things were changing behind the scenes with the KOA, and it came down to, I'll take responsibility as the president, but it came down to board members not communicating that we don't have an insurance policy, and then the people that own the park were saying, if you don't get this by X date, we're not letting your event happen. And I was on the phone with some very frustrated insurance claims officers and everything. That it ended up happening. We were fine, but it was really close, and I was really worried because the event would not have happened. Yeah. And so those are, my takeaway there is you need a list of things that need to happen. Otherwise, the event is dead, right? If you have a few less porta potties, okay, sure. If you don't get up all the pop-ups you need, okay, fine. We are a rain or shine event, okay. If you don't have a security guard there, the ABC will not let you have your event. The alcohol board control will not let you have your event. If you don't have insurance, the site will not let you have your event. So those are things where you need to really raise the priority. And if you need to put multiple people in charge of them, that's what happens. So in general, my frustrations and the concerns always happen before the event. When the event occurs, you kind of just have to relax, don't worry, and have a homebrew. That's my take.
So I would imagine with bigger events, there's even more talk behind the scenes about what I'm going to bring up now compared to smaller, more private, I guess, parties like Chip and I put on for the pre-funk. But we definitely had the conversation that these events are going to involve a fair amount, if not more, of drinking alcohol. And we know that, unlike when I get absolutely obliterated, I just get more lovey-dovey and try to make people laugh. And I've never been angry on any front. It's just not something I can relate with. But such is not the case for some other people. And we'll talk a little bit about what you and I witnessed that one year in a minute. I've brought it up on the show before, but Chip and I talked about, hey, if we run into the scenario, because you think about, I'm going to focus mostly on the Chop and Brew pre-funk in Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. We hosted it at a craft brewery. The owner and brewer were amazing and let us just take over their entire brewery. We could go back to their barrel section and hang out. They were giving people samples. It was a beautiful, beautiful relationship that we did. It was Indeed Brewing. And so we were lucky in that, but we had to talk about prior in the planning section. We had to talk about, hey, what if somebody goes too far and gets just sloppy drunk? And let's break that down. If they're just drunk and sitting in a corner and nodding off, we're going to treat that differently. Are we going to treat that differently than if they're drunk and trying to start fights with people, stuff like that? These are things that we had to keep in mind. We got, again, very, very fortunate. Everybody was grown-ups and we had a great time. I think the only issue was one relatively inebriated person kept forgetting to give the mic up at karaoke. And so we had to go take it from him. He was cool with it. It was like not a big deal. The fact that that's the biggest thing we had to deal with, I feel very fortunate about. But the more people that show up, the more vectors you have for craziness to happen. We've seen it at homebrew cons. I've seen it at SoCal. How do you deal with that stuff in the moment? So you're already at the event. What is that to me, I think for some people, it's like, this is the shittiest part of the event, being the host of this, is having to deal with crazy people, basically.
So I think the main thing we have a strong advantage over just a general population event is the homebrew community is really behaves very well with alcohol. We hear it from the campground who has to, they have to deal with the people after they leave our event, right? We just set them up. We tee them up. They have to go camp. We hear it from the ABC. We hear it from our private security that we hire. It's just the very low rate of occurrence compared to a different event. So that's our first barrier. The second one is we take it upon ourselves as the CHA to have every club go through alcohol server training, which means every club has to assign a person that's going to be at the fest that understands what people look like when they're intoxicated, what are the rules around that, and say, if you see this person, they're stumbling and asking for more triple IPA, you say, hey, how about a water? How about a seltzer? You try to encourage them to take a break. And then the third and final, which we don't like to exercise, is we have security watching people. And when people get in trouble, I hit the walkie-talkie and say, all right, let's go talk to this person. but I will say, like, it is a crappy situation to be in. Probably if we're calling the security guard, we're kicking them out of the event. If that happens, we get one of those a year, which is fantastic rate. That's 1 in 1,500, 1 in 1,000 people at our event, and that's over the course of 12 hours. So it's pretty amazing, the low occurrence rate. But as we witnessed, things do happen.
Yeah, things are bound to get out of hand at some point. At some point, we'll just put it that way. Even if that means, over 5 years we've only had one issue. Well, that one issue for some people can be a defining characteristic of said event. And those are things, my goodness, we got to keep in mind. I think as you're executing, obviously, everything that's planned, you're trying to execute in the best way possible while you're running the event. One of the things it didn't even occur to me until I was hosting, in the middle of the Chop and Brew Pre-Funk. I love to have fun. Anybody who knows, for better or for worse, anybody who knows me knows that. I want to be a part of the party. I want to be drinking beers. I want to be having fun, singing karaoke. But when you're hosting it, you have to in my experience, you have to take a step back because there are going to be, quote, business things that got to get done, And so you can't be who you might be or act in the way that you might act if you were an attendee when you're hosting it, when you're actually running the event. And so an important thing is determining what is the role of us as hosts of this. How are we going to engage with the people attending who probably part of, one of the appealing things about coming to this is, especially for smaller events put on by folks like Brewlosophy and Chop and Brew, is they want to hang out with us. They want to come, chat with us about a beer that they made and have questions about and stuff like that. So do we have a beer with every single one of them? Well, we'd be, 18 beers deep within the first couple of hours if we did that. And so, really kind of just focusing on what is my role at this and how am I going to convey that?
Yeah, and that's important. I think we, as I said, over the years, we've changed the infrastructure or power structure within the board, where it used to be when I showed up in 2014, 2015, basically 2 people ran the event. Now, that's not to say other board members didn't really participate. They did, but it was not a full board activity. It was, in my honest opinion, it was wrongly balanced. And that meant people would run off, they'd be gone, their walkie-talkies wouldn't be on, they would just not be managing the event, which is we needed them. So nowadays, everyone is participating. I think in general, what we say is, you're always available. Unless you've said, hey, my club is doing a special keg tapping at 3:00. I need to be there for this. All right, do it, but come back at 4. And making sure that everyone is participating and managing themselves and managing their own time, because, I would say the most difficult part of the event, if I could speak honestly about it, is Sunday morning cleanup. No one wants to get up. No one wants to be there. We actually have volunteer staff where if you only do, I think we do 2 hours during the event or 1 hour a Sunday morning or something like that. We if you just show up for that hour, it's a lifesaver for everyone. So it's just when people are being a little sluggish out of Sunday morning bed and we have to pack up the event and leave, right? We all want to do is leave. And that's the most challenging time. And that's making sure and communicating that to your planning staff and your execution staff that, hey, we're always in this together. And how you work that, and it's something I've worked on, is making sure people understand that you're not going to run this event forever. You serve, you come on the board, and you leave. When it feels like you're never going to be able to leave, that's when people get really burnt out. And so understanding that this is a few years of dedicated commitment to executing and serving your core audience, and then you get to go have fun in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. The cleanup, by the way, is the worst part of any event in my opinion. It's the worst part of brewing. It's so boring. It's like, and plus it's like the nail in the coffin. It's done. The event's over. Yes. Darn it, But let's because we have the time and I think it's entertaining, let's talk about some of the issues we've dealt with. And I'm going to start because the craziest thing I've ever seen was actually at SoCal Homebrewers Festival. And it wasn't, this is not dogging on, this is one individual who made a really stupid, decision, while clearly must have been, I don't even know. I didn't meet the dude, but he seemed drunker than he should have been. A blow up dinosaur, one of those funny big blow up dinosaur things. Person comes out and is running around making people laugh, and this dude out of nowhere thought it would be funny to just take him down. And lo and behold, the person in this dinosaur suit was a relatively small-framed woman who was just trying to make people laugh and got taken down by a football player-sized, drunk guy. And we saw it with our own two eyes, and I remember the look on your face, Andy, was like, oh boy, I got to go deal with this now. That's something that's going to happen. Things of that nature are going to happen. And we talked to that guy. I wish we had maybe followed up a bit more. It turned out the person that got tackled, we know her. She's actually a very good volunteer, and she was really happy that she was not hurt, and she took it in stride. Things are like, oh, this will be fun. Of course, that's inebriation, intoxication is going to think you, up is down. And you're like, okay, well, this seems like a good idea. And then the person that did it was way, way beside himself afterwards. So, yeah, you have to watch out for those things. I think in general, the biggest thing, you get bad actors that show up and drink too much, and then they have to get your friends involved. And then there's injuries. It's going to happen. It is a campground. It isn't this perfectly manicured playpen of there's gopher holes. There's weird things, and so people trip. That's why we always have this the first aid guy on staff the entire time. And you gotta be ready for those things as long as you can. That's why it's so important to have good leadership and good management staff, like the board of directors. Is like we can all take care of that. We all understand what to do. We're always talking about those things and then thinking about the what ifs. And as long as you can prepare for that, that's the best you can do. And then in the moment, it is your job as the event manager to provide that level of security and control and say, hey, we can handle this, not to panic when things like that happen. But they're going to happen. And I don't want to make it sound like it's just the people who are trying to have fun that end up getting in trouble, for lack of a better term. Sometimes, most of the time, I think you would agree with me, Andy, maybe not. It's the person who is overly inebriated who's causing the trouble. Yeah. Sometimes, though, it's that person's over inebriation that causes them to do things that everybody else is like, what is your problem? I was at an event, definitely not one I planned. I was just an observer here, where I saw somebody, I'm not going to go into too much detail, out of the blue, stand up and start screaming at another person. We were on a bus. This was like a pub crawl type of deal, and just start and accusing this person of things that are completely not true, but they were lit, and the whole bus finally got up and was like, you need to stop, chill out. But I start to think about what if those accusations are made outside of this bubble? That is not a good look. The fact that one person's going to be willing to do that. So it goes both ways. Yes, there are going to be the drunk people who are very validly doing bad things, but then there's going to be these invalid things sometimes as well. And all of that needs to be paid attention to. I was at an event. So there's our local homebrew club here in Fresno, the Central Valley Warthogs, hosts a annual Oktoberfest that they call Hogtoberfest. It's a really amazing event, and one of the big things about it is that it's not just beer that people are bringing and such. It's food, and they'll usually have like a big barbecue or something. And you think about, man, what if they run out of food? And there's all these people here who are expecting to come and have a plate of barbecue and all of this, and that that you got to think about that and what happens. If this event is going to go for X amount of time, and people are only getting one plate of food right when they show up, should we have some other stuff later? There was one event I went to where the host just decided to order like 100 pizzas because people were hanging out longer, and these are things that you have to do, kind of, spur of the moment decisions that you're making to ensure that the people attending one are safe and not drinking too much on an empty stomach, but are happy as well, Yeah.
I mean, we ran through this for this whole time I've been managing the event. It was how many food trucks? What is the right number? Is it none? Because it's camping, right? So you go back to your campground, bring some food. If it's none, do you let people run a barbecue behind their booth? No, we don't want open fires in a contained environment. So no. Can they serve food at their booth? Yes, if it's like a snack or something. And then we've gone through and said, hey, food vendor X, this is the event. It's this long. We want you to stay the entire time. Bring enough food to serve this many people with this many other food trucks. And by and large, we've learned how to communicate with them. It took a while. I think it just depends on how you communicate the event. The main thing is they don't want to be captive if they can, do your event and then leave and then do some other event. So it's a balancing act. Then again, because of the length of the event goes back to kind of planning, it is this in and out policy, right? Many beer events I've been to, I think all of them I've been to, it's you're in, when you leave, you're done. You're cut your wristband off and you're out. Because the event is only going to be 3 or 4 hours. Our event goes on all day. People come and go as they please. And that allows people to chill and to go take a break. It's camping, right? So, hey, go sit under a tree for an hour, come back. So, yeah, logistically, I've always wondered about that. What we do have is a huge advantage being in a KOA is they have, and the KOA only started maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Was that the KOA has their own infrastructure for food, which allows this essentially just around the corner, so to speak, a cafe. So people never are without the ability to get something. There's a great gift shop and convenience store on site, which didn't exist even when Marshall was there. It was nothing compared to what it is now. So there is infrastructure built up around it, and that goes into the planning. Like if you don't have that, how do you mitigate? Oh, well, we lost 2 food trucks. What are you going to do? Those are the kind of things you have to worry about a little bit.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I've camped at other KOAs. They all have a very similar feel. And like you said, it can be really nice when a person doesn't have to leave the event to go grab a bag of chips or something if they want to.
Exactly.
There's all kinds of built-in stuff like that. Something that I think is much more important for bigger events like the SoCal Homebrewers Fest is what are we going to do if somebody gets injured or sick? How are we going to deal with that? I would imagine that in addition to, security guards and porta potties, you also have some sort of medical staff, whether that's nursing or something.
Yeah. So we've gone through this different ways because of just how laws have changed over time. And like we say earlier, check your local state regulations whenever you're trying to put on an event like this. But we had to find how to contract first aid because it was getting odd. It was like the old vendors weren't calling us back. It was weird. So essentially what you do is you call a company that has contractors or you hire them for some number of hours. And eventually you're probably gonna have to do overtime pay or double pay or something because the event is so long. But there is a guy, we have a booth and a big first aid sign. And I meet that person when they show up and they're there ready to go. What's nice is they kind of just sit there their entire time. It's a pretty good gig for them because our event is pretty cool. But like I said, on the order of 1 person passes out, won't wake up, call their friends, get the medical over there. He'll look at him, say, "Oh, he's dehydrated. He's on his way. Oh, I tripped, I fell. Okay, put a tourniquet on him. Get him going. Do you want an ambulance? We'll call an ambulance if you want an ambulance. That sort of thing." So by and large, it scrapes, cuts, and unconsciousness that usually resolves itself with a glass of water.
God,
it is what it is. Those are very it is pretty simple for the first aid people, which is nice. But he's ready to do anything.
Oh my God, I would imagine so we live in the state of California, Andy and I do, where cannabis is completely recreationally legal, and I would imagine the experience is the same for you, Andy. No matter where you go, there's going to be, if it's an event, if it's a party, whether it's a concert, a homebrewing fest, whatever, there will also be ample amounts of cannabis there as well. Well, the term that we used to use is crossfaded. And I've been to events where you see people who are just completely crossed out, and like my thing is, as long as you see their chest rising and they're got their eyes closed in the corner booth, more power to you, stay out of the way. But you gotta be, you said just lost consciousness. That would freak me out if I'm hosting an event and somebody loses consciousness.
you got to watch out for it. I think the main thing, we also structure this, we tell people marathon, not a sprint, eat food, drink water. The other part is we also made rules okay, so yes, you can't recreational cannabis is allowed in the state of California, state law. We also made a rule when that was happening because it was rolling out, right, state countrywide, right. We made a rule and we hold to this. If people ask, do not add that to any beer. Because people don't understand what that's going to do to their system if this is new to them. So we want to make sure very clear, and we were very upfront with people about that. No illicit substances other than alcohol or ethanol in your beer. We really want to structure that because it is a tasting event, right? You don't know what is in this? Oh, I added some special stuff. That's not going to fly, because that's going to that has reverberations to other problems outside of the event too. So for people that get drug tested, they don't know what that's going to happen, and so we make it really upfront, because people are experimenting. That's homebrewing, right? That's the whole point. But we want to make sure that doesn't happen and cause repercussions.
Total side note: I've yet to have a cannabis beer that actually tastes good, so also another reason not to do it. But the final point. Again, this is the same thing when it comes to the planning stuff as it is with the execution part of it, is that we're going to leave out so much, but what we're focusing on here is kind of the bulk of the stuff that's on our mind as we're running these events. I think one of the really important things, and again, I haven't really had to deal with this because of the nature of the events that Brewlosophy has contributed to planning and executing, but how you're going to treat special guests or speakers or whatever. You think about the AHA, and I think I've spoken at every homebrew con that I've gone to. In some capacity, and they will, if you get approved, so you apply to speak there, they're one of the unique events that usually doesn't reach out to try to get you to come, at least in my experience. All of the other stuff that I've contributed to, whether that's Ireland, New Zealand, SoCal, I've been contacted by the host saying, hey, we want to get you out here. We're going to fly you out. We're going to put you up for this number of days. And you're going to get everything, this and this and this will be covered for this number of days. That is something that you have to calculate into your planning, because it's not cheap, right? I'm a human being just like everybody else, except you're promising me that in exchange for me, taking the time to come out there, which no one's going to deny that it's a lot of fun, but coming out to do this, that I'm going to get this, and this, as a part of it. And that's got to be covered, right? And it's got to be seamless, and it's got to feel, you don't want to leave, a host or, a guest speaker feeling like, well, this was a mistake, right? And because they're going to go and tell their friends who you might want to have come the next year. And I actually know one person, somebody I respect highly, who has been doing this for much longer than I have, guest speaking and all of that. And he straight up told me, he's like, when somebody asks me, I have a cut and paste that I email back to them saying, this is what I expect. I'll get this, and this. These are the days. Let me know if you're okay with this. And it works really well for him. And he never has to worry about, what am I going to cover on this? What's my responsibility on this? The AHA, again, HomebrewCon, you get covered to go to the conference so long as you're a member or, again, an approved guest speaker, but everything else is on you. All your food, your housing, if you're going to stay in a hotel or Airbnb, that, at least in my experience, maybe there's even more VIPs that they treat differently, but I've had to cover all of the hotel rooms. I've had to cover all of my food. I just get, the ticket covered for the conference.
Sure. So. Yeah. I think that what we've done is we try to mix around, headlines, like headline speakers. Because there's been, if you look at the history of the event, there's been some fantastic speakers. We're working on them this year too. We're trying to get some big names, someone that could contribute, but also, like we've said, that can contribute constructively to the event. If the event is for homebrewing, is there someone that is got a great topic in homebrewing? Did they read a book recently? If it's a previously homebrew that's gone pro and they've become very famous, and they're also a great speaker, right? Because we want someone that can be eloquent. We balance it between finding local people that want to talk, that they do reach out to us. They'll say, hey, I want to talk about this topic. All right, great. Or we try to solicit that. We really want to get out in front of those invites as soon as possible, especially if this is going to be key to your marketing. You want to book them, right? If there's someone that is out there that you've seen them publicly speak before, if they've been a speaker, if they are somewhat notable or famous, book them as soon as possible. And actually the deal making, you're going to get this if you do that, helps you solidify that agreement. So, we'll do is for Foam Brew Fest, we'll make sure they're going to have a campsite. If they want to camp, great. We'll get them a trailer, or now KOA has cabin. So hey, you get trailer or cabin. So your sleeping arrangements for Friday and Saturday night are covered. If you need food, we'll figure that out. But there's also food trucks. We figure that out if you need to. Travel is where we get into a bit of a dicey situation, because travel can be a very widely ranging cost. It can be gas money. It could be a plane ticket. So it depends on who it is and the name, and we'll all agree as a board. What we'll end up doing is probably shifting costs around. So say we had to fly someone in and really, really want them, and they will only do it if they fly in, and that's part of the negotiation. Maybe we'll not do a second band or a third band. Maybe we'll cut a band. We'll save that money somewhere else. We'll just try to figure it out. It just depends on what we want out of the event, and then or maybe the other speaker is local. and they're already going to camp with their homebrew club. They're going to the event. They're just as bonus points for them to get to talk, right? So it is that balancing act, because you want to be ready to get the right people attending, or the right speakers attending, and you got to be able to maybe stretch yourself a little bit. But that just depends on the type of event you want to run.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I think, as far as homebrewing goes, United States probably has the biggest number of people interested in it, the biggest number of people whose name is strongly associated with homebrewing. You use the word famous, well-known, whatever. And so, that can kind of work out. What I've found with these international events is oftentimes, there are going to be names that are associated with homebrewing in these smaller countries or countries that are far away, but they want, the folks who have podcasts or who are writing books or who are doing these things. And if you call me and you say, hey, Marshall, we really want you to come out to Ireland or New Zealand or wherever it is. I got an invite to go to Paraguay, and unfortunately was unable to make it, but they always start off with, of course, your flight and your lodging are going to be covered. And that is their negotiating token, is we will get you out here. We're going to fly you out here. You're going to put you up and we're going to feed you. All you have to do is come hang out with our local homebrewers, brew a beer with them, give a talk on something fun. And I always make it a point to at least offer to do something interactive. And one of the ways that I've done that is I will work with locals in those areas privately. So we'll connect on the side, and I basically, for a month, I treat them as though they're a contributor to Brewlosophy, which you're familiar with, Andy, and it's walking through an experiment design and having them brew the beers, or if we're doing a Hop Chronicles or a Short and Shoddy, doing something like that, so that when I show up, I've got these beers that are ready from a trusted person. And I always ask the organizers, give me your best brewer. Who do you think will do this for me? Because I really don't want to show up, and because in a way it represents what we do with Brewlosophy, and we want it to be good. And so to me, that the effort that I'm putting into organizing this thing and putting together a slideshow, which I'm not very good at, and making sure that my talk is enriching and valuable for the attendees, that's the price I pay for being able to go out and see these really neat places and hang out with new people. And typically for me, I'm paying for my wife to come along with me, and we'll usually extend it and turn it into a vacation. So it's not free necessarily. I am giving something back, but it's in an exchange. And I think that's an important piece of it.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, you want the event to be as successful as possible. So even a speaker, right? If the speaker's like, hey, this is going to be tough on my schedule, I might have to leave early, I'm not sure, they're like, I love to attend, but, okay, great. Thank you. Or do you have someone else you would recommend speaking, right? You have a connection. Do you know who else could do that? And so it just depends on the nature of it, and it totally makes sense for international travel that they're going to have to think about that up front. But
I don't know who you're talking about, Andy. When you had to drive me to the airport so I can make it home.
Yeah,
for my
well,
daughter's
it's a white glove service here. It's a white glove service here at the Southern California Homebrewers Festival. That was a great morning. I got up after running the event, and it was pouring rain out. And Marshall had to get back home to see his kids as a birthday party, I believe. And I'm up at like 6, and I'm just getting my coffee. And then I just, out of nowhere, Marshall just starts banging on the window of my car saying, what's going on? I'm like, we're taking to the airport, bud, and get him over to the airport and get him to go. And it was good, but that's the important thing is that it's a really important thing is that you need to, like everyone, they want to be taken care of, right? You want to make sure that there's gonna be no hitches. And so that means in the end, I think my biggest takeaway for this is you got to step up. As running an event is not, it's not easy. It's straightforward. You just got to do the thing. And it means that you may be pushed, you may be challenged, challenge yourself to really take on these more difficult tasks, like, being ready for anything.
Yeah. Every time we go into planning a show, planning one of these episodes, I think, what is it that we're hoping to get across to the people listening? What do we want them to absorb from this talk? And, I think both of us understand that the vast majority of people listening to this episode aren't planning homebrewing events. I think there's an element of understanding what is behind all of that. And there obviously are other people out there, whether it's Julia Hertz from the American Homebrewers Association or folks who are planning, local homebrew club events, who can speak differently than we did today about the very same topic. But I think it's key to understanding what really is there, that people are putting a lot of effort into these things. And while it may not be perfect, we're doing the best we can, again, to contribute to this community and make it the best we can possibly make it. And, if you're at an event and something doesn't happen exactly the way you had hoped, have some grace, understand that we're doing the best we can. And there's a lot of moving parts. And it's important for us to, try to execute the way that we need to, and there are going to be changes made, and then there are going to be changes that just cannot be made because of things like laws, regulations, and whatnot. So that is all the time we've got for this episode. Do you have any final words on your experiences planning and running brewing events, Andy?
I mean, just give it a shot. If you've enough people and organized, it could be a small camp out, it could be a small tasting. Just start small, get your feet underneath you, and then I think there's always an appetite for events. I think we're going to swing around here again and have more homebrew events out there, and just be ready. And it's a lot of fun. Just do it safely, do it organized, but create a good crew that you trust that can run the event, and prepare for anything, but prepare to also have a lot of fun, because it's a great time.
Yeah. And, I, for one, am very, cautiously optimistic about what's going on with the American Homebrewers Association right now. I'm super stoked that Drew agreed to come on, last minute. I just messaged him a week and a half ago asking him, hey, will you take the spot in February? I know our patrons really want to, we're going to have a lot of questions about what's happening with the AHA, particularly HomebrewCon. I'm of the belief that it's events like that and looking forward to those events that really can kind of gel people together. They're a ton of fun. You're hanging out with people that you may not get to see but talk to online all the time. So again, if you have questions about it and you're already a patron, don't forget to join that session. If you're not a patron, you can go to patreon.com/Brewlosophy and become one. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel, The Brewlosophy Show, where host Martin Keene covers a bunch of fascinating topics in the world of brewing and beer. And remember to head over to brewlosophy.com to stay current on everything we are up to. The Brewlosophy podcast is made possible by the generous support of our sponsors, as well as all of our rad listeners. We seriously could not do this without you. Cheers to everyone who has subscribed and left a review of our show. It makes a huge difference. If you haven't yet, please consider doing so. Head over to brewlosophy.com/support to view a list of ways you can easily help us to continue producing this podcast. If you want a reward for your support, visit patreon.com/Brewlosophy. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Brewlosophy podcast. Until then, think beer.
Start off the morning with some hot tea, lemon and honey, cause it suits my bro. Put some herb in the bowl, yeah, it's homegrown. Ain't gotta go through the middleman no more. Life is good, the likelihood of me.
You can have it all. Great pay, awesome benefits, a flexible schedule, the chance to grow. At Cox, we're recruiting auto and diesel technicians to join our Mannheim and Fleet Services teams. If you're ready for a new job and want to experience an award-winning workplace, drive your career forward with us. Visit cox.career/autotech to learn more. That's cox.career/autotech.